Hi, I'm Jim Riley, and welcome to All the Right Connections. And my guest, of course, James Reynolds, President of Cablevision.
Jim.
Dave Fingar, Chief Engineer.
Jim.
One of the good guys around here. James, we really need to talk about broadband and some of the upgrading and just kind of give us an update as to where we are.
Well, it seems like we're talking about that every show, Jim.
But that's what the process is. The process is like that.
It really is, at the forefront of a lot of our activities right now. And a lot of that's driven by the fact that the customers are using services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon is now creating content on their own.
Right.
And many people really enjoy streaming content over the internet.
Now, you talked about the millennials. What we're talking about is the younger generations that are growing are living with us, and they're insisting on having these services.
But I think it's certainly younger people that grew up with all of the different electronic devices that we use to communicate these days. But it's also, I think it goes across demographics. I mean, the technology can be challenging for some people that are older, but once they learn how to, get to Netflix and stream a movie, they want it. They enjoy it. And the problem is that when the internet was really just set up to communicate text messages, the bandwidth necessary to send an email to you or to me isn't nearly as demanding as the internet necessary to stream the content of a movie. It takes a lot more capacity to do that. And the other thing that I don't think many people understand is that in order for your cable modem to deliver the best performance, we have to eliminate most of the electronic noise that's on the system. And Dave, he's the engineer, and he's got all these fancy pieces of equipment, a spectrum analyzer and we might even be able to show one of those at some point. But it shows a graph of the carriers on our system, the signals that we send out over our cable lines, and it shows where those different channels are and different carriers, but then it shows a level of noise. There's always noise out on the cable system. Anything that generates electronic frequency noise is going to find its way in through a loose connector or something like that.
Which causes problems.
So what we end up what we're ending up having to do in order to constantly increase the speed and the bandwidth that people demand is to systematically go through our system and to clean up that noise. And we've got that underway right now.
Dave, noise will translate for some people static. Forms
noise
of static,
translates to less internet speed.
Right. It just gets in the way. It kind of blocks the flow, if you will. So tell us about how you go about eliminating that, Dave.
Well, we've seen it. We can see it on the spectrum analyzers. We know it's there. It's at a level that has been acceptable. But now we need to increase the speed even more.
Right. So it's not acceptable.
It's not acceptable anymore. Right. We need to lower it. We've hired a contractor to come in and scrub the system.
What's the name of that company? Just so we tell
American Broadband.
Oh, American Broadband.
Many of you have seen it out on the trucks.
So you'll see it out there.
Right.
In fact, I saw one yesterday out by the house. And I wondered what that was. It wasn't really...
They weren't trapping your line, were they, Jim?
They might have been checking me out.
You have electrical noise coming out of your place?
The funny part is that I did notice that, and I think people are noticing that out there. So it's kind of nice for them to know that they're providing this service that you need, Dave.
That's what we're doing. And it hasn't been without its problems either. There's interruptions in service. As they go through and sweep and scrub the system, they may need to change a value of a pad or unplug one thing and plug in another.
Right.
Your service goes up for a few seconds or a few minutes.
Right.
And it is disruptive. We apologize. It should be short term.
Right, but still it's necessary. If we're going to improve, as we need to improve
we have to do
on
it.
a daily basis, we have to do it.
Right.
But all kidding aside, Jim, I'm saying they put a trap on your line, but they in fact are, as they go through the system, they have they've established certain specifications, levels of noise, all of the line electronics that balance out the signal as it travels around 1,000 miles of cable plant. They have very specific levels that they're looking
Right.
at and setting. If they find increased noise coming from a particular house, and that's where most of the noise starts in customers' homes, because what happens, at Christmas time you get a new TV,
Right.
and you open it up, take it out of the box, run a cable from the where it was and screw it into the back, and maybe you don't tighten it completely. And so then you've got other devices, electronic devices in the house. That noise gets to the fitting where it's not tightened, and it feeds back out on their line to the system. And so they are, in fact, putting what we call traps outside, and then we're going back and following up, and maybe we have to go in and rewire the house because it was wired, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
We have to check all the fittings. Our technicians have meters that they can measure all of the different signal levels to make sure each house is getting what they should get, so that they have optimum performance of the internet, and also that if there's noise, they try to find it.
Right.
Where's it coming from?
Right. But Dave, that to me is a great service to provide our customers. Don't you feel that way?
Well, it is. We're increasing the number of carriers that will transmit on the upstream from 1 to 4.
Right.
And we're going to increase the number of carriers that transmit on the downstream from 4 to 8.
Right.
So your service will be at least twice as fast.
Yeah, I think that's terribly important. The other is you're just helping the customer maximize their experience with the service. I think that's terribly important to do.
Yeah, I think that it's also significant to point out that this is an ongoing activity because probably, you go through the entire system and fix all the areas where there's different noise. I mean, for example, the electric grid in our area, whether it's Central Hudson or National Grid, these contractors from American Broadband are finding where certain insulators on certain poles, where they have transmitters or transformers, I guess.
Right.
They need to be changed out so that electrical noise isn't floating
Right.
around.
So you're working with those organizations
Yeah,
as well.
and so what I was saying is that we'll go through this whole process, and then we'll probably have to start and come back and look at it again. And I think we mentioned on the last show that we've made an investment in this new software called PathTrack.
Yes.
And what that does is it allows all of our technicians with a small tablet screen to look at each different section of the system. We call them nodes. And what they do is they can look at it. Once it's fixed and the noise level is lowered, they can look at it and say, well, that looks good today. Or tomorrow, maybe there's something going on and we need to go out and see what's going on
Right.
with that. But it's an ongoing process because we've talked before that the demand for internet is doubling about every 18 months.
Yeah, it's not going to go the
The
other way. It's gonna
faster
increase.
it goes, the more we have to get rid of the noise,
Right.
the electrical
And Dave,
interference.
it's kind of like tending a garden. That's why it's ongoing.
That's
Yeah.
a good analogy, Jim.
Yeah, it's really that kind of process where you can't stop looking at it because that's how you're going to maximize the performance.
More weeds and no fruit, right?
Yeah, really, that's something that's terribly important to do. One of the things that you thought we should do, and we probably should do, I want to mention one thing. SEC, Southeastern Conference Sports.
Boy, you're
in the fall
switching
with the
gears.
football. Well, I got to do it quickly because what we're going to do is go outside the building here and show people some stuff a little bit. So we want to make sure that we just mention this before we wrap this and then move out a little bit. Football, everything starting in the fall.
Well, I'm sorry to say that the summer's gone so quickly because we're
It's
already
incredible.
We're already halfway through August, and that means the beginning of football season and college sports. And we've just been able to negotiate the carriage of the Southeastern Conference, which brings in all sorts of schools in the southern states that compete in football. That's what's going to be happening first
and
here.
all their additional sports as well. So,
But that should be very popular, and we're glad to be able to add that to our lineup.
I think that's terribly important. Excuse me for interrupting and doing that. But as we go back to the gardening, let's use that analogy, the gardening again. What we wanted to do today is also take the folks outside the building and show them the garden that we need to tend. I think that's something that we'd like to do, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think what's important in that regard is that I think it's hard for most people, I think, to really understand. They have a small box, a cable modem, that they plug into their computer. They plug it into a router so that they can have Wi-Fi, or they plug it into a device so that they can stream content on it. But they don't really know much more than that. And there's more to providing a fast internet connection than simply running cable down from pole to pole.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can be misled by that. It's simple, not simple.
Because the faster it gets, it's all controlled by very sophisticated electronics, these cards that are very expensive, and the hub sites, we've got almost 5 hub sites now where we have we centralize this electronic equipment that has to be updated. And Dave will tell you that with the fiber optic cable, they use lasers which help to control the light which carries the signal all around our system, and we have to change the lasers out to get things faster.
Right.
So there's a big investment here, and I think it's important to show that.
I think so. So Dave, you're going to take us out to the hub site.
Where?
And then you're going to give us some background on that, and people really see what the background work is to provide this service that everyone requires.
I will. We'll meet with one of the engineers out there as well.
Oh, good. But we're going to rely on Dave because he's the chief engineer. When we come back, we're going to be at one of those hub sites, and Dave's going to fill us in on that, how that system works and what that needs to do to provide this service. We'll be right back.
The living room. It's a great place to watch TV. But what if you're not home? Like break time at the office or waiting for your ride. Now you can watch TV everywhere. Stream your favorite shows or live TV on any computer, tablet, or smartphone. It's all included in your Mid-Hudson cable service for no extra cost. Call 1-800-342-5400 or visit mhcable.com to watch TV everywhere.
Looking to spice up your table? Mid-Hudson Cable invites you to travel with us and meet the chef. Join host Jim Riley as he gives you an intimate look at some of the area's best eateries, from the burger joint down the street to a 4-star restaurant. Meet the people behind the scenes who prepare some of the best dishes in the area. Thursday and Sunday at 8 p.m., Saturday at 11 and 8 p.m., with a new episode each month, only on Channel 11. Meet the Chef, available exclusively on Mid-Hudson Cable.
We've been talking about a lot of technical issues. We want to get you out of the studio, get you to one of the new hubs, and look at some of the technology we're dealing with. So we have Dave Fingar.
Hey there, Jim.
They told me to point the microphone. Steve Renault.
Hi, Jim.
Steve is Chief Technical Officer. This is Chief Engineer. I love these titles. These titles are great. But the reality is, we really want to show you what we're talking about when we talk about the technologies, the equipment, the sophistication, what really is necessary to provide the speed that the customers so much desire. So let's go inside and take a look. All right, Dave, this is a technical segment that we're doing, so I'm going to leave this to you and Steve, okay?
All right, Jim. Thank you very much. Well, this is the Caro hub site. This is the hub site that feeds the customers in the western part of the cable system, Windham, Caro, Westerlo, Greenville. And originally, most of this gear was located in Catskill, as was everything. And the increase that we saw, the need for the increase in speed, necessitated us moving it out closer to the customer. And so here we are in Caro. I'm going to hand this over to Steve, but you're looking at all the gear that serves these customers and brings them broadband. Steve.
Thank you, Dave. Well, basically what you're looking here is, we call them downstream lasers, and this is where the each segment of the network goes from coax cable that's in somebody's home to a what we call a node. It then comes fiber optic cables back to this hub site, and these are the lasers that actually receive the fiber optic signal and then convert it back to a coax environment so that we can bring it into this piece of equipment here, which is called a BSR router, but basically that's just a router that takes each node and converts it to IP to get out on the internet. And by locating this equipment out here on the hub site, it allows us to add larger amounts of bandwidth to each node and therefore increasing speed. Over here we have some equipment that we call Path Track. It's a project that Dave's been working on for quite some time that allows us to do some monitoring and spectrum analysis. And Dave, you want to say a couple things about that?
Sure. The Path Track gear enables us to monitor what the system is doing. Along with the need for more speed comes our need to keep the system very clean and running just that much tighter. Path Track gives us those views, lets us look at that. It sends alarms out to our technicians should anything go wrong, and that's Path Track.
All right, give that back to Steve. I want to ask you a couple questions.
Sure,
Steve, as you look at this environment, this is going to grow, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We've got several hub sites located throughout the counties, and we just completed one up in northern Greene County, New Baltimore.
Yeah, it's in New Baltimore? Yeah. Now, also, as this equipment goes through, you have to also upgrade it? Does
Sure.
that happen as well?
Yes, I mean, there's constantly not just hardware upgrades for the physical equipment, but the manufacturers are constantly updating the software,
Right.
the firmware.
Yeah.
So we're constantly, just staying on the cutting edge, to, incorporate the new technology so that we can get the most out of the network that we can.
Right, and you're a technician and I'm not. But really what it amounts to is that the customers need to have increased speed because of all the sources of information they get require that level of speed, right?
Sure. Everything nowadays is, being done from the cloud. There's SAS, which is software as a service, where no longer are people storing the applications on their computer. They're storing them on the cloud, on big servers with Amazon or,
Right.
so on and so forth.
One of those companies that provide those services.
Correct.
And you have to have the equipment that allows that speed to handle that environment.
Sure. We're the link between the customer and the cloud. So as different applications evolve, and Netflix and Google TV, and we're constantly having to increase the capacity of the network to allow the customer to have a good experience.
Right, because as a customer, and I'm a customer of Mid-Hudson Cable, when I go even to something as simple as YouTube, I want it to function the way I want it to function.
Correct.
You make sure that happens.
We do our best to make sure it happens quickly, and we do everything we can to keep it on.
Yeah, and that's really what you're talking about as well, Dave, right? It's that whole notion of seeing that the customers are going to be able to function the way they want to function.
That's the way it has to work, and it has to keep growing and growing as well, Jim.
Yeah.
I will add that we're lucky, maybe not lucky, but we've planned this in such a way that our outside plant, the plant that we built that runs down the streets and roads through our system, is totally upgradable. We simply need to plug in new modules in here, upgrade modules in here, upgrade software, as Steve mentioned, occasionally change a modem out in a customer's house,
Right.
but all the wires that run in between are totally functional and enable us to do that.
Yeah, that's terribly important because, like you said, yours is making sure that this equipment is upgraded to the level it's necessary, but without that system being in place that's upgradable, you'd have to go back and start over again.
Absolutely, and that's thankfully, over the years, Dave has done a real good job at planning and trying to, envision what's coming next. And,
Right.
and the fiber optic network that we have in place, right now gives us that ability. The equipment and electronics are a very expensive investment. I don't want to
downgrade that.
Downgrade that, but we don't have to string new fiber every time that we do an upgrade.
Right, so you can build on it. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Providing service to the customer. This is the kind of technologies required. This is the investment that's required. And you know what I like? The teamwork.
Absolutely.
The teamwork as well. I want to thank Steve Renault. I want to thank Dave Fingar. And of course, I want to thank James Reynolds, President of Mid-Hudson Cablevision. I want to thank you for joining us on All the Right Connections. We look forward to seeing you real soon.
Welcome to Smart Home from Mid-Hudson Cable, a monitoring solution that brings the power of video to protect your family and home. Using cameras installed by Mid-Hudson Cable technicians, you can check in on your pets, be notified when your children get home, or look in on the nanny. Starting at just $14.95 a month, use your smartphone to monitor your home or business. Call today to learn how Smart Home can help you.